going on, Dave?
What we gonna talk about today?
Well, it's Gridiron 360. Thanks for listening. I'm Bill. That's Dave. We're talking about the 2020 NFL Draft prospects, the draft being 2 days from now. We are in the Pac-12, and we're going through really the top 11. We'll drop some other names of the overall players in this conference that are eligible for the draft. We just spent a whole cast, about 25 minutes, on the number one prospect in Pac-12, Oregon quarterback Justin Herbert. I think it was worth it.
Yep.
So now we're going to move on, though. The number two prospect in the Pac-12 for the draft this year is a junior out of Arizona, was an offensive tackle for the University of Southern California Trojans, Mr. Austin Jackson. Mr. Jackson.
Sorry, Miss Jackson.
6'5", 322, 34 and an eighth on the arms, 10 and a fourth on the hands, 5'07", 40, threw up a nice 27 on the bench, ran a 7.95 cone. Projected by most accounts as, in terms of tackles, as top 10, maybe somewhere in the 5 to 10 range. But before somebody that we have mentioned many times, Georgia's Isaiah Wilson, not before Andrew Thomas. That said, let's talk a little bit about Mr. Jackson, okay? Because you're talking about a team in USC that, was a little bit in flux with their coach. Certainly there, a lot of things expected from their true freshman going into his true sophomore year. Quarterback and P.J. Daniels gets hurt early on, not able to pull through the season at all. You see the introduction of another young true freshman quarterback this year in Keaton Slovis, and they had another guy come in because Slovis got a little hurt throughout the season. What? That said, through all these changes, this guy he maintained being a staple on that offensive line. If you watch him, he's got great competitive toughness on his run blocking and gap blocking. He's always looking to get somebody on the line, at least, put his hands on them and then get to the second level. You always see him, especially if the back gets the edge or gets past that offensive line, him trying to continue to move downfield and stay in front of him. That 5'07", 40 isn't great, but I think he plays a lot faster, believe it or not, as an offensive tackle. Is a big dude, has good, seems to have some pretty decent footwork, not necessarily fast, but good placement of his feet. Surprisingly has a pretty decent anchor, doesn't have to be phenomenal at tackle. You really want to be able to move. I want to see a lot of that at the inside or interior lineman, but he does have this, considering he's 6'5", 6'6", and when, especially in pass blocking, the ball snapped, he does seem to stand straight up. But he still somehow maintains some decency of an anchor. The other thing is his arms and his hands. He's got decent-sized arms, pretty good mitts.
Long arms, yep.
And even though he'll, in pass blocks, stand straight up, his arms still manage to fire out and up from his hips inside. So he's able, he's still able, though he's tall, he drops his, arms a little bit so he can kind of come up and into the inside of the lineman. I like this kid. I do get concerned with some of the bigger, faster guys standing straight up out of his stance that he could get, lose some balance. But I like this kid. I think he's definitely, like I said, there's a lot of depth in the line, especially at tackle. But there's also a lot of really, really good-looking tackles that are also projected high in this draft. So there is the potential for him to go day one. I think he'll probably end up early day two, but there is a potential, like I said, if there's a run on these guys or somebody wants to, move around, he might come off.
Yeah, he's one of those names. Another guy we haven't really had a chance to cover is kind of reminding me, not reminding me, he's having some of the same I guess, later chatter about him that's helping him move up on a few boards as the guy from Houston, Josh Jackson, right? Jackson, I think it is. But anyway, what I like.
Josh Jones from Houston.
Jones. It was Jay. I knew it, but I didn't know it. But anyway, here's the kind of the thing I see about him. Usually when you get a guy that comes out early on the offensive line, because understand that is probably the line positions are positions where you need to be the most developed physically. Offensive line, pretty much across the board, definitely interior defensive tackle. Usually you see the guys that come out early started earlier in their career. He didn't start as a freshman, so he's a junior now. Is he a redshirt? I don't think he's a redshirt either. I think he's a straight junior. Here's a cool story about him. I do want to tell this. This is a kid that, obviously has a chance for a draft projection, and not that most people wouldn't do this, but I got to give credit where credit's due. His younger sister needed a bone marrow transplant in the summer of last year, 2019, and he did it. Okay, not shocked, but that's a tough thing to go through.
Procedure, dude.
Yep, and he came back and he started all 13 games. Now, here's part of your problem is, you can look statistically in some of the things, and you can look at the offense of USC, and at times it was very muddled and discombobulated. But understand they started a young quarterback starting off the year, then were pushed into a true freshman, and then they got to their third string. I don't even remember what year he was. This was a team that had an offense that was constantly in flux. This guy was kind of a mainstay. I think they said it in here somewhere. I read it on one of the couple of sites that we look at, and I thought this was a good description. Some teams may be concerned about the gap between his floor and his ceiling. And I think I go back to him not starting earlier. I think this kid's got a very high ceiling. I love his build, not just height, weight, but how he carries it. I like a lot of the traits that he has, but like I said, usually when you see a guy coming out as junior year, they're a little bit more seasoned in game experience because you got to be willing, learn some of the rigors of the NFL.
Right.
This is a guy that hasn't had it. So therefore, if you dedicate time to this guy, you might see some troubles with him early that, you generally when you draft early with him, you might not want to see, but also has a very, very high upside. I like this kid a lot. I could see him. I agree with you. Late first round, early second round. I think the tackle positions are going to get run in this draft.
Yeah,
I could see this guy moving ahead of a guy like Mekhi Becton because he's the sexy pick. This guy's kind of got the pedigree. And again, another last little thing. His grandfather played at USC. What's up with grandpops and going to your schools, man?
We've had a couple of
My
them
grandpop
here
didn't
in
go to
this
college, which is why I'm on the mic right now.
Yes, we've had a couple in this conference. It's very good. All right, so Austin Jackson, looking forward to seeing where he gets taken, either late Thursday or maybe early Friday. Again, offensive tackle for the USC Trojans. Number 3 in the 2020 NFL Draft from the Pac-12. Yes, another guy that Daddy talked a lot about this year. This gentleman is from DeSoto, Texas. He's a junior, a wide receiver for the Colorado Buffs, Mr. Laviska Shenault.
Yep.
Laviska Shenault Jr., 6'1", 227, 31 7/8 inch hands, arms, 9 inch hand, 31 7/8 inch hands. I mean, holy crap.
Those are like hula hoops?
I don't know. That's a Marvel character if I've seen one. 31. Those are the arms, 9 inch hands. Put 17 reps up on the bench. Ran a 4.58 40. Couple comps here. I see Sammy Watkins. Yeah, maybe. I like. She had, I think, a little injury issue in the combine.
It was significant, I think.
Was it a knee?
No, it's a core injury, and I know that we had 2 guys at FSU, and one in particular that was a superstar type build physically. He ended up transferring to Penn State at the end of his career. He never lived up to it, but I do get concerned about core injuries.
When did that happen? Was it?
He had the surgery. I think he'd been playing with it. He had the surgery, I think, at the end of the season. And according to this, and this is the problem with coronavirus issue is. He is declaring himself and has said his doctors have declared him 100% healthy, but no team declares anybody 100% healthy until their doctors look at him. Right. So that could be a challenge for him. I bring that up for that. A core injury, it just really depends. I mean, if you're talking about torn abdomens or tendons that are starting to pull off the hips, these things can be
for a wide receiver. Yeah, that could be really
years or to a point where
you're never able to get full value from the kid. Let's see. He went over 1,000 yards in 18, 86 receptions, 6 TDs. He also had a couple, looks like rushing attempts, 17 for $115 and 5 TDs.
Okay, he's built bigger than most running backs in this draft.
He in 2019 had 56 receptions, 764 yards, 4 TDs, also 23 rushing attempts for $161 and 2 TDs. Again, you see this guy when you don't get to see a lot of Colorado, especially in our region of the country, but it is usually a late game. That said, this guy, when he was out there playing, especially when he appeared full strength early in the year, like he was just all over the place. Yep. Another guy whose name is called a lot.
Yeah, this kid he plays like he's built. He's very physical, almost to the point sometimes where it's a little bit of overkill, just because he can so manhandle somebody. He's not particularly tall. So, it's 6'1". And again, not short,
6'2",
not short.
But
yeah.
no, but I mean,
But
he looks like he's bigger than that.
If you think about that, how many receivers at that height are going to put 20 extra pounds on pretty much any corner they have? And I'm talking about the big corners. I think he's going to be physical all the way through, and someone wrote something about on the combine that just worrying about, because he is so physical, does that hurt his durability? And that goes back to that core issue. But for a guy with relatively small hands, this is a guy, when he gets the ball, it's like he's going to squeeze the thing until it breaks. Like he's got some hooks, and you just like it. He's just a fierce, tough guy. He's the kind of guy where I think you got to draft him without that physicality in mind and look at his skill set as a standard wide receiver, and then just hope that physicality adds something extra. But I think if you're looking for him to change the dynamic of the wide receiver position, you could overdraft him.
Yeah.
But I like this guy. I do. It's just right now it's hard because there's so many people to compare in this draft
up
class.
There pretty high for wide receivers.
Yeah.
He's in the top 10, just maybe outside of the top 5. But on the same token, he could end up late day one. Possibly, he won't get out of day 2, but we'll have to see.
This is the other position. I think there's going to be a run, but not a run that's making people fearful because it's so deep.
Yeah.
Like, meaning I could see 7 guys off the board through the first 4 or 5 picks of the second round.
I looked through the rankings for wide receiver in this class. I'm going down to, 25 guys, and I'm still like, there's some value in here. So there's a lot.
I would have liked to see him get the end zone a bit more. Was not a big end zone guy throughout his career, but just look at 2018. He had 86 receptions, only 1,000 yards. So, and not a prolific offense, so only 11.8 per catch. But that's a guy that's catching tough passes. The question is, can he be a little bit more of a field stretcher? Not a blazing guy, but a guy that can run the 15-yard outs and and create separation enough of a window for quarterbacks, those kind of things, as opposed to catching the ball, either behind the line of scrimmage or on, 7-yard routes.
Right.
But again, that part of the problem was it was Colorado. So
this is true. All right, let's go to the next guy. He is the 4th-ranked guy in the Pac-12 from California, junior for the Utah Utes, cornerback Jalen Johnson, standing at 6 foot, $193, 31 3/8 on the arms, 9 3/8 on the hand, ran a 4.5 40, 15 on the bench, 36.5 vert, 124-inch broad. This kid is played for a team that had an opportunity to make the college football playoffs, had a very efficient offense with a good running back, some big uglies on the line, able to move that line a little bit, and a quarterback that didn't throw a lot of drops, let alone interceptions. The defense, however, was really probably the better part of this team.
Yep.
And this guy was one of the reasons for that. Let's see here. He looks like he was the starter last 2, maybe 3 seasons, so his entire career. In 18, he had 41 total tackles, 31 solo, a sack, 4 picks, 4 passes defensed. Last year, had 36 tackles, 34 of those were solo. No sacks, but had 2 picks. Had a TD off one of those picks and had 11 passes defensed. This is the comp I see. One of them here, Shaq Griffin from the Seahawks. Maybe.
Yeah,
I think
that's a pretty good comp.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think this guy might be even better than that, though.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I like about him, if you watched Utah play at all this year, they played like their coach, especially defensively. They are an attacking. They're a physical. They want you to feel the game after it's over. And so this is, they play a lot of press coverage. He was very good in press coverage, very physical at the point of attack. What I like to see and what is being talked about with him is that while he may not be, run down all the way down the field, and line up and press cover you and run all the way down the field with you, there is belief that he could play like off man coverage, which, meaning give a little bit of cushion, but has some recovery speed to be able to get back and make a play on a move from a receiver. And that's, in all honesty, we've talked about several guys that I've mentioned that I think are more press cover guys and zone guys that are going to be short area corners. The fact that he can do both, is going to be a pretty good skill set to have, especially if you're talking about, probably his draft status is probably somewhere in the second round. Mm-hmm. That's a good value right there for that kind of player.
He's a top 10 corner in this year's draft. Could be top 5 depending on how you feel. I mean, he's if he's not 5, he's around 6. He's between the 5 and 7 in terms of overall corners. So unless there's a mad run, there are again. It goes back to there is some guys above him that will probably get taken. If there's 4 or 5 corners above him, that'll be round 1, and then maybe sometime in the middle of round 2, early middle of round 2.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably 2 guys right now that people are talking about that there is a belief that they can go all over the field with whoever they have to. But most teams don't play that defense consistently throughout a whole game. I mean, it's usually when you're up against Michael Thomas. And let's be honest, Michael Thomas embarrassed every single guy that he went against this year.
Doesn't matter if you're the shutdown guy or not.
But even if you're talking about like number ones on mid-level teams, you're probably not even doing that too as well. So I think this guy's got a shot. I think to do something more than probably maybe even his draft status. And he's probably going to be a second rounder.
Yep. All right. The next guy on the list, this will be the last one for this cast, and then we'll try to knock out this guy's number 5. So we'll try to knock out our 6 through 11, name a few other names outside of that. This young man, tall man, is from Lake Stevens, Washington, a redshirt junior, a transfer. Originally 5-star, highest recruited quarterback in the country, went to the University of Georgia, and now moves on as they moved on to Jake Fromm as he came in to Washington. And that is quarterback Jacob Eason for the Washington Huskies. 6'6", 231, 32 7/8-inch arms, 9.5-inch hands, 4'8", 940. Again, I'm not too worried about the combine numbers in that regard. Projected second round. This kid is, by most accounts, top 5 quarterback listed in this year's draft. Certainly physically a specimen, but, I've talked about in many casts how when he got to Georgia, he was taught in his true sophomore year, when true freshman Jake Fromm came in, really what it means to study the game and watch tape, because the understanding, the gossip through the grapevines was that he just didn't do it, period. And when Fromm came in, the guy behind him, the freshman, and he saw him doing it, he, by proxy, started to get a little more into it. Where he is with that now, I don't know. That concerns me, but he does have, he's an elite size, elite arm.
He is old school prototypical.
Yeah. Talk to me about Mr. Eason. What do you think about him?
All right, well, here, let me give you this.
Where do you think he'll go?
NFL Combine website. This one, I haven't seen one of these like this before, so it kind of blew my mind. NFL comparisons: Carson Palmer and Brock Osweiler.
What? I mean, I don't think Palmer and Osweiler are alike at all.
Exactly. Maybe that's kind of trying to say ceiling floor.
They might be saying has the talent more of a Carson Palmer, but the size more of a Brock Osweiler with his size and height. I don't know. I don't know.
This a guy, like, I did watch him.
I worry about this kid's. What is one of the things that we've addressed when I talk about the scouting course that I took, and they have different things that they evaluate on, and 5 things that are evaluated. Every guy's evaluated on, and then they go into position by position, different evaluations behind them. But one of the 5 is what?
Well, you tell me, because
competitive toughness, and that's one thing I don't know he has.
Yeah, what's kind of interesting to me with, first of all, I will tell you, biggest red flag to me that I think I could see is, and you'd have to give me an example where it hasn't happened, because I'm really racking my brain trying to think about it here in the last couple of seconds, but high-profile quarterbacks, and maybe it's because Florida State has never had anybody like this, but high-profile quarterbacks coming out of high school that have to transfer and been successful. That kind of goes back to your competitive toughness. Like, I look at this too.
I mean, Joe Burrow was like, I think he was like the Mr. Ohio in high school, but I don't know if I don't remember where he was in terms of.
I mean, Easton was.
He was
I
the
remember,
number one
he
guy.
was the guy.
He was not just the number one, but he was the guy.
Maybe Joe Burrow. Maybe. See, I said, I go. You have to refresh my memory. But here's the thing about this.
What about the kid what about the other kid that was in Ohio, Tate Martell?
Yeah, but that's not a good example, I don't think. Look where he's at right now.
Oh, you're saying
I'm
that
saying that have had success and then gone and been able to do something. And I think that speaks to the competitive toughness. I watched a couple of his games because I watched segments, Washington, some of the games, Pac-12 isn't as widely shown, and if it is, it's late, so I don't watch all of them. But there was a few times that I wanted to watch him play. There was one game where I saw that, I just didn't find him to be spectacular, and then another game, which was a tougher game, where I thought he played better, and that was the Oregon game.
Yes, I was just pulling that up. That was the one game where maybe the first time I ever saw him really compete, where I think people thought they expected what they expected out of him as a quarterback all along. That game, I think, in his entire career, was the one game you saw what everybody was expecting.
Yeah, and I mean, I just kind of look at he played on a Georgia team in 2016 that was not a poor team. They weren't great. But they were very good. They didn't win the SEC East that year, but they were talented. And again, you go back to that Jake Fromm. So I look at it and go, was he just kind of stuck in the middle of a bad program? Again, that was the end of Mark Richt. I guess I just want to see. I wanted to see out of this kid consistency. And yes, what I'm saying is anecdotal because it was 2 games. But with all that talent, get out there and get it done. And let's be honest, a lot of the Pac-10 teams or Pac-12 teams he played against were not that good. There were some that were good, but it wasn't the best year in the Pac-12. I mean, it just wasn't. I mean, when you got USC down, UCLA had some decent games, especially near the end, but they looked horrid at the beginning of the year. I mean, Arizona and Arizona State was good, but not great. Arizona wasn't all that much to talk about. Washington State, you got to worry about Leach and his high-powered offense, but I just never really. I wanted him to wow me when I really watched him, because he never did at Georgia, and I watched him at Georgia.
Oregon game was the one. If you watched it, that was the one. He was 23 of 30, 289 through the air, 3 picks or 3 TDs, no picks. And that was the one that really, all those times, because I agree with you. I mean, I think this is a kid that can make all the throws. He's physically, just a freak. He's athletically gifted, but you said the word consistency. Agree totally. Like, I need to see more of that. I said competitive toughness. That worries me, especially at the NFL level. This is a guy when I felt like when he was under duress, he didn't have much to offer. Whether it was trying to move in the pocket, escape the pocket, find an outlet, keep his eyes up. That and that kind of goes to me a little bit with the competitive toughness. Is he just going to let me throw the white flag up when all goes bad instead of trying to make something out of nothing? In today's NFL, the good quarterbacks find a way. Right? The little left-handed sidearm Ghibli of Patrick Mahomes that now everyone, the no-look pass, when you're under duress. This is a kid also, one of the things I saw, which now that I read it, does make a lot of sense. And part of it is his height. His drop, when he drops back, especially on a 5-step drop, he drops way back. And if you're a tackle that in a drop pass is just trying to move that a fierce edge rusher that's really fast, just over the top, umbrella him, and he just drops too far back, that's going to cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, what's funny is kind of when I watch him, the best way I could describe him, and this is my Daily Bears reference.
Yeah.
It's like the Jay Cutler in the pros, watching him do the same thing in college. There were things that I saw Jay Cutler do with his arm talent that I'd be like, man, like he looked really good. But then I just had too many, which eventually turned into almost
moments.
And that was putting it lightly.
Yeah.
That was putting it lightly. And I saw a little bit of that type of inconsistency. Like sometimes I would see him make a play and I'd be like, damn, like he's got it. Like, why can't he just put it together play after play after play? And the truth is some guys just can't do that. And I think, like, I look at that kind of version, that feeling of, like, I know he can throw that bomb to that guy because he's got a rocket arm, but, like, why can't he?
Right.
And I just kind of felt that same feeling when I watched him.
All right.
Anyway.
All right, so that takes us through, we've now rattled off the top 5 overall prospects for the 2020 NFL Draft in the Pac-12. Run through those top 5 again for us, Dave.
All right, we had number 1, Justin Herbert.
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 Did you see that? I think Bobby Hebert died recently.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay, buzzkill. Number 2, Austin Jackson, offensive tackle, USC. Number 3, Laviska Shenault, wide receiver, Colorado. Jalen Johnson, cornerback, Utah. And number 5, Jacob Eason, quarterback at Washington.
All righty, we're going to cut it there, and we'll bring you the rest of the Pac-12 prospects right next here on
The Gridiron.
Peace.